New glasses. New webcam. Birthday weekend. Let's go. No. No buzz. A Just Book Club. We're going to be talking about Yukimi Ogawa's Like Smoke, Like Light, her debut collection of short stories. Yukimi Ogawa is a short story author who I've been aware of and frankly a fan of for literally a decade. I first encountered her work, specifically the story Town's End, which is in this collection, in 2013 in Strange Horizons, a really, really, really wonderful online speculative fiction magazine that I have written for in the past, that I someday hope to write for again when I start taking myself seriously as opposed to this bullshit. I have like sort of followed her work throughout the years and haven't read everything she's published, which is great because I don't know if this is everything. I don't think this is everything because I feel like there was definitely some Clarkesworld short stories that I have read of hers that weren't in here. I'm like 99% sure that's true. She is a writer who has a very particular voice that I fucking love, which I love when it's in the style that I most particularly like personally associate with her, and I also love when it blows that style up, goes a whole different direction. There's so many stories in this book that do things that I did not know that she did, and every time I read one of those, I was like, "Oh shit, you're really good at this too." But I guess I'll start with I wrote a thing, which is my job is selling books. He recommends Like Smoke, Like Light by Yukimi Ogawa. Ogawa's debut collection is full of tightly written fables, surprisingly ambitious mysteries, and intricate worlds just beyond the veil. This collection drips with a sense of wonder that most science fiction works aspire to, yet very few achieve. If you're curious, I'd recommend finding Town's End and giving it a spin. There are better stories in different genres, but it will give you a sense of Ogawa's uniquely syncopated prose, her fascination with her characters, and, most importantly, her delight in the telling of these tales. If folklore isn't your jam, any of the Kiriko stories might do. These mysteries set on the backdrop of a tourist destination where people are born with unique colors and patterns weave themselves into and out of shockingly intricate knots. You'll have fun with this one. I dare you not to. That's what I wrote. Because I really want to sell this book. I want to sell this book because I want people to read this book, but not because I care about my job. This is a Just Bees book club, by the way. Only bees are allowed to watch. Just in case, you know. Yeah, and then I kind of want to just say a couple things that I don't know what I'm quite gonna say, and then I have a little notebook full of like short 2 to 3 sentence explanations, or not explanations, but sort of summaries of each story that I'm gonna probably read through, and we'll see if I say things while I do that or not. I don't know. I fucking love Yukimi Ogawa's prose. She has this particular way of writing that I don't think I've ever encountered in any other writer. And I don't know how to talk about it. So the fact that I'm talking about it is pretty upsetting. Because I haven't found the words for it. This is a thing that I, as a former person who wrote a lot of things, this would be the sort of thing I like sort of percolated on, like worked through, made a bunch of like notes on, made sort of worked through in the sentence level, and then sort of came to a final conclusion. And I haven't done that yet because the fuck is this format? All of which to say, I think, and I think it's fair to say I'm that person. I've been talking about the particular sentences of Delaney here. I've been talking about the particular sentences of Proust here. I will be talking about the particular sentences of Virginia Woolf here. I have very strong tastes in very specific directions. And that's a bad way to talk about anything. But I do know what I like, and when I do like a thing, I really, really fucking vibe with it. This is one of those things. This book, again, Like Smoke, Like Light, by Yukimi Ogawa, is so good. And the other thing I mostly wanted to say was, like, I really appreciate... Ooh, I didn't know I was going to say this, but I'm not going to say this. There is a really good sort of disinterest in genre boundary lines here in a way that I think is great. And I want to, call back really quick to the thing I said in the blurb. Let me quote myself. This collection drips with a sense of wonder that most science fiction works aspire to, yet very few achieve. Sense of wonder, spelled impossibly, is an old science fiction sort of literary term, and I think it fucking gets that. I think it gets I believe that was Suvin, but I might be just thinking of Novum. Sorry. The way that science fiction kind of does a sort of artificial sublime is, I think, maybe the best way I can right now, and maybe the quickest way one could explain a sense of wonder, is the sense of encountering things that are impossible and looking at them with a bit of awe. I think Ogawa is uniquely good at doing that in the speculative fiction field. And I say speculative fiction to finish the point I was making earlier, right? Like that there are a lot of different kinds of stories here. There is straight up science fiction, but that's not necessarily the wheelhouse. A lot of what Ogawa does is sort of talk about either extremely folkloric, sort of fable-ish oriented fantasy style things, or talk about this particular island that she sort of developed throughout the thing, which I don't need to get into at this particular moment. It is so loud here. I have put off recording this video about Like Smoke, Like Light by Yukimi Ogawa for like a full week, just because I feel like I was gonna do as bad a job as I feel like I'm doing right now. So the first story is called Like Smoke, Like Light. I'm now going to be reading from my little orange notebook that I got at a baby shower for a friend whose baby has arrived and who I extremely owe a text message to, and probably a lot more. Hi. Here's my description of Like Smoke, Like Light. A middle-aged woman, stripped of her powers, attends to a man who has locked himself in a heavily warded room to watch the ghost of his dead wife and son. Eventually, she befriends a ghost. There's going to be a lot of extremely oblique spoilers in these. Next story. Perfect. Obsessed with beauty, a woman goes around stealing people's features and replacing them with her jewelry, until she meets a sex worker named Perfect, who is, and she becomes an island. Next story. Welcome to the haunted house. One of the attractions at a traveling haunted house fails to lose her memory and is horrified at what the master does, until she has to make some hard choices herself when in a position of power. Next story. I think I'm just gonna read these and get gone, because I want to talk about each and every one of them. I don't think I have the mental prowess to do it. The next story is The Colorless Thief. A former thief gets beaten nightly to show off her beautiful bruises in a country where people are born colorful. An attempt to fix her color permanently leaves Hai the perfect opportunity to resume her old vocation. Uh, Next story is The Flying Head at the Edge of Night. A head that flees from its body every night learns how it was created and finds love. If any of these even sound remotely interesting, again, you should reread them, B. I reread them all. I mean, I skimmed them, but I couldn't stop rereading them when I was doing this like exercise of trying to summarize them in like 2 to 3 sentences, specifically like 4 lines in this size journal, which you can see how fucking messy my handwriting is. There's no way I can write anything in that space. Next story, In Her Head, In Her Eyes. Hase, on assignment from the colorful island, gets bullied for wearing a pot on her head. When she takes it off, the consequences are positively Lovecraftian. I keep waiting for one of these to be like, oh, and that's the one you should read. But like each of these are the one you should read. Next story, Town's End. A lady takes a job at a marriage agency after a breakup, and some strange clients start to arrive. She helps them get the seed and learns their truth after a Tanuki encounter. Next story, Taste of Opal. A woman with opal blood is sold by her parents. Her blood is used to make medicine, allegedly. Her merchants save her from a bad situation until she finds her twin, but debts are debts. Next story, 100 Eye. A tree whose fruit is faces is encountered by a lady with long arms covered by eyes. When one falls, she uses incense to make of it a child called Nin. They pleasantly body horror their way around together until a lesson is learned. I fucking love every one of these. Next story, Grayer than lead, heavier than snow. Dr. Planet needs colorless Kiriko's patterns to avoid withdrawals. The patterns cause problems for the androids, Sakura and Mizuha, and it might be catching. Here's my very, very brief pause. There are a lot of proper nouns happening here. Things like colorless, like the lock into the colorful island. Things like androids. Things like incense and wards. I hope that is clear. I don't think it is, and I know it's not, as a matter of fact. I hope it is, but I don't think it is, and I know it's not. Clear that this is a collection of stories that like fucks genre, that like goes through what we might broadly think of as genre fiction and grabs what it wants to and takes that and uses it every single time and never feels obligated to genre, to developing a particular like niche within any particular genre, that feels genuinely expansively like it's embracing genre. This is, I think, the best version of speculative fiction, right? Speculative fiction sort of was I think it initially in the 60s, but it's slowly been like coming in and out of fashion, is the term for science fiction, fantasy, and horror as an umbrella. Speculative fiction includes weird fiction, stuff like that. Sort of genre that doesn't include things like romance, that doesn't include things like erotica, I guess. Sort of grabbing the science fiction, fantasy, and horror aspects and saying like these are actually all. The important thing with speculative fiction is saying these are actually all in the same sort of generic tradition, that they all inform each other in ways that is useful to speak of them all as the same thing. And I think this book is as strong an argument as anything that my fucking inability to talk. The thing I should have said instead of erotica there was like fables, was like folklore, things that Ogawa is pulling on very explicitly and doing very well. That like one could argue are all in conversation with each other, and that has mostly happened through the sort of generic description of speculative fiction versus like pulling science fiction into one bucket and fantasy into one bucket, and slipstream into another bucket, and magical realism into another bucket, and horror into another bucket, and weird fiction into another bucket, and cosmic horror into another, etc. Next story, Rib. A young boy named Kiichi adopts a spooky skeleton lady who hides in his departed mother's kimono. They investigate her death and retrieve her tortoiseshell brush, but the skeleton loses a rib. Next story. The Shroud for the Mourners. During a routine checkup, Kiriko discovers an odd pattern. I keep pausing because my handwriting is fucking terrible. She recommends medical attention. Kiriko and her mentor talk to doctors about these strange polyps and trace them to a crematorium where something nefarious might be afoot. Next story. Blue-Gray Blue. Tsuyu, an ultramarine... I've never said that word out loud. An ultramarine. Tsuyu, an ultramarine eyeglass salesman who changes color, meets Ai, a researcher of blues. They fuck a bunch. Then Ai reveals a secret. It dissolves. Next story. Kiriko and her master are approached by Madame Enamel, whose colors are beginning to spoil. They invent legal cosmetics and prevent themselves from being prosecuted. Legal cosmetics. Ooh. Think about that. You ever think about what cosmetics would look like in a land where people are not just born with different sort of colors and patterns on them, but their whole sort of industry is based on people visiting them to view their inborn colors and patterns, and what that might look like in terms of the legal structure of changing one's colors and patterns. Ogawa did. Next story, ever-changing, ever-turning. Shop worker Shino meets model Tsukiko, and they strike up a beautiful, longing-filled friendship until Shino tries on some nail polish. This whole thing. Interesting. Tsukiko's blood is the only remedy. A revenge story ensues. We got 2 left, friends. I can't believe it's not playing. Next story, Nini. A cute humanoid AI full of bugs acts as a caretaker at a nursing home planet. It meets a god and accidentally kills her. Much later, the bugs and the god's erstwhile priest greet some adventurers. This little bit like has made me very confused because what is I think it's yeah. So in 100 Eye there is the long-armed lady with eyes all over her arms who encounters a tree and the tree is full of faces, and one of the faces falls off, and she uses incense to give it an eye, and then it becomes a little guy. A little guy named Nin, or Nin. In Nini, there's a little guy named Nini, Nini. And then there's this last story. This is the tree in the center of the world. It's the last story in the collection. It's also the only one that wasn't published elsewhere. From what I read in the sort of the final page of the book, I'm 90% sure that's true. The copyright notices. Yeah, this last story is the only one that is original to this anthology. It's It's pretty good. I kind of want to read it again, actually, now that I've read it the first time when I was just reading the book and then sort of like skim read it, but like mostly read it again when I was taking these notes. I think it's quite good. But check the name here. The tree in the center of the world. A shopkeep in the tree at the center of the universe trades in adventurers' materials for food, until a precocious gal named Nunu forcibly becomes their apprentice. Nunu, after some secrets are revealed, has a plan to let them go on their own adventures. So there's a Nin, there's a Nini, and there's a Nunu. They're all sort of like precocious little guys. I think they may all be the same character. I don't know though. I don't know a lot of things about this book. The thing I do know about this book, again, like Smoke Like Light, stories by Yukimi Ogawa. Before I say the thing that I'm about to say, there's also an introduction by Francesca Forrest. This is published by Mythic Delirium, a publisher I don't know at all. I think the introduction by Francesca Forrest is very good. I did read it before I read the whole thing. I think she schematizes the book in an interesting way. I might personally have preferred to have read it afterwards, not because I think it sort of diminishes anything, but because I think it is a good read of Ogawa's work that is a useful schematization, but I personally was already sort of invested in Ogawa's work, so I didn't especially need that. But I think it's well written. I think the sort of the broad, a lot of what I'm saying here is extremely informed by Forrest's introduction. So obviously, I don't know if Nin and Nini and Nunu are the same person. And I don't know how you would make them be the same person because they're all from different genre sort of inflections that occur throughout like Smoke Like Light. I really want someone to make that argument and to tell me about it. Unfortunately, it's just bees here, so there's no way for me to like gain that knowledge. But like, I really want to know. I really want to know. I really love this book. Okay. Thanks for not watching.